So here's some of the chains. Today on In the Woodyard, when should you replace your chain on your chainsaw? We're going to talk about it right now. So the exact time you should replace your chain on your chainsaw is when it needs replacing. That's kind of the easy answer, but it's not that simple. There's a lot of factors that go into when you should replace your chain. Now, I've been cutting wood for a very long time. I cut myself about 600 face cords or 200 full cords of firewood every year. So I cut a lot of wood, and I do it all with a chainsaw. I don't have a processor yet. Someday I may, but so I go through a lot of chains. I go through easily 15 to 20 chains a year. I would say on average, that's pretty normal. And it depends on what kind of wood you're cutting as far as how long your chain's gonna last. It depends on the time of year you're cutting, as far as if you're cutting wood in the winter time versus in the summer. It depends on if you're cutting wood that's come from a wood yard where the logs have been rolled around in the mud and dragged through the the gravel and things like that. I've had some really bad wood where you have rocks actually embedded into the bark of the wood, and you're going to go through a lot more chains. Now, another thing that can happen is if you're cutting in the woods and you're cutting in an area where the grass is tall or maybe the snow is deep, and you're cutting down into the snow, which you really shouldn't do too much of, or if you're cutting trees off and sometimes there's rocks sticking up. And that happens. You can actually hit a rock and ruin your chain. It's pretty easy to do. Now, a lot of people think you can get a lot of life out of a chain if you just keep resharpening it. But what happens is your chainsaw is designed actually to cut best with a brand new chain. A chain that is fully toothed with the rakers working really well. Some people like a chain that has been sharpened once or twice, and I kind of feel the same way, that after your first or second, maybe third sharpening is when it's the best, because you're putting that really good razor sharp edge on it. You take your rakers down a little bit and it'll cut a little better. But then there's a lot of guys that will leave a chain on way past its useful life. Yes, you can leave it on as long as it's cutting, I guess, but a lot of guys will have the teeth down. It just nubs, where it's just hardly even doing anything. Well, that's bad for several reasons. Number one, the most important reason is the shorter your teeth get, the less wood you're cutting. And the teeth need to actually be able to dig into the wood to cut it. And if all you got is a little bitty nub hitting it, it's not going to do much. And that's not good, obviously, for the speed of which you're going to be cutting, but it's also really hard on your chainsaw to be working that hard, to be putting out dust, basically powder. You want nice big chips, and if your saw is not producing nice big chips, you got a problem. More than likely your chain is dull. It could be that your chain is, the useful life of it is over. So there's that. So when you're cutting and you notice that your chain is not really biting into the wood, it's like not pulling the chainsaw and pulling you into the wood, it's probably dull and it needs to be sharpened. But you're only going to get so many sharpenings out of a chain. A chain on average, for me, I can get probably easily 6, 7, 8 sharpenings before it's getting to the point where the teeth are getting kind of short. If you're not cutting into any kind of rocks, if you're not hitting any sand or dirt, if you're cutting really clean wood, if you're cutting green wood, it's going to cut a little better, and you might get 9, 10 sharpening, something like that. There's no magic number. It's whatever your chain, however long it will last, where it's still cutting efficiently, and that's the key, cutting efficiently. Now some people will, you see them cutting with their saw and there'll be just a reefing on it and smoke's coming out and powder's coming out, and more than likely the chain is dull, but it could be that your teeth are so short that it's not really cutting much. Once you get past about the halfway point on the length of your actual tooth, say your tooth is this long, once you get down about to half, it's going to not cut as well. Once you get down to where it's just a little sliver, it's not going to cut very well at all. And your saw is going to be working a lot harder, and you're going to be working a lot harder. So you should change it way before then. And if you're cutting production type wood, where you're actually trying to produce a lot of wood, if you're cutting where you're getting paid for what you produce, like I am with my firewood, or if you're cutting logs where you're trying to make some money on the side, you want to actually have your chain cut really well. And if you're fighting the chain, fighting the bar, fighting the saw, you're not producing the wood as fast as you should. So you need to sharpen for sure, or maybe replace your chain. So that's what we're gonna talk about. I'll show you some examples. Now, I know of several guys, I know 3 guys particularly. One's a good friend of mine. Another guy is a distant relative. And I know one other guy that I met once. And I'm gonna tell you about one story. One time I was cutting wood on a guy's property, and he came over and saw me sharpening my chainsaw in the back of the truck. And he says, "What the heck are you doing to your chainsaw? Something wrong with it?" I said, "Well, yeah, it needs sharpening." He says, "Well, you can sharpen those?" I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Well, you've cut wood here before. You cut firewood for yourself. What do you do?" He says, "Well, I just buy a new chain." So there's that. He didn't have any idea that you could sharpen them. And then one other guy that I talked to, he said he just goes until they're dull, and he gives them away to a friend of his, and then he sharpens them. He wants to always have a new chain, so you could do that too. But I feel you can get a good 6, 7 sharpenings, maybe 8 on average, and then your chain is going to be getting down to where the tooth is getting pretty short. And if it's down to just a little bitty nub, you should have threw it out long ago. Now, if you get a chain that has several good teeth and several bad teeth, yeah, you can still keep cutting with it. But once you get 2, 3, 4 teeth where they're down to just little bitty nubs, it's time to change your chain. So that's real important. Okay, here I have 4 different chains. This one on the far left is a brand new chain, never been used. See the length of that tooth, how long it is? This one right here is a little more than halfway used up in my opinion, and it's getting shorter. This one needs to be changed. That's too short. Once it gets that far, you're not cutting very much. This one is ridiculous. You can see it's got a little scarring across it. This one was run over, I think, with some rocks and things as far as what it hit. But that's ridiculously short. You can see it's right to this guide mark right here, that horizontal, on the diagonal line you see. That's way too close. This one right here actually is in need of replacing. This one still has maybe 1 or 2 sharpenings left in it, and this one is the brand new one, as you can see. So I just thought I would show you there. You can see those really good enough. So brand new, about half used up, pretty much done, and that's ridiculous. So once they get down to where about half, like if you were to take this brand new one and take it down to about right where I got the pointer right now, you'd be about equal with this one. And that's about half the tooth is gone already. Once it gets much lower than this and you're down to about right here, it's pretty much done. Your tooth should be, your chain should be changed. And once it's down to this short, you should have threw it out, last year. So there you go. There's the different levels as far as what to look for, the 4 different levels. Okay, so here you can see we have a tooth that clearly is way beyond its useful life. It's right down to a nub. But the very next tooth is probably could still maybe get 1 more sharpening out of it, and you could probably still cut with it, although I think it needs replacing. The next one is about the same. You can see right here, this one here is, you probably can get 1 more sharpening. The next one's about the same. Right here, this one looks pretty good. This one's not too bad. That one's so-so. The next one to me is getting too short right there. This one right here is, it's short but not terrible. That one you could probably get another one out of. I'm just gonna zip through these here. Here's one that's too short, I think. That's down to a nub. I got one coming up here. I'm just gonna go fast forward here. That one right there is pretty much just a nub. You can see that one. There's not much to that one. We're going to spin ahead a bunch more here. I see one coming up. There is a nub right there, that one. You can see there's hardly anything left to that. It's just that little bit right there. Not good. That one, yeah, it's so-so. That one, so-so. So what you got to do is you got to look at this as a whole group. If you've got 4, 5, 6 little bitty nubs in there, you're not cutting very good. Even if there's some teeth that still look good. Here's a nub right here. That's down pretty far right there. There's another one coming up that's beyond its useful life. You're getting down to that little bit there. This needs to be replaced. So that's what I'm going to do. So while you're looking at this, I'm going to bring up the new chain that I'm going to put on, and I'll show you the difference here real quick. If I can get this in here and get it in focus. There's the new chain that I'm going to put on. There we go. Look at the difference there. Huge difference. If I can get it right next to it. There we go. There, it's right next to it. Look at the difference on that. Huge difference as far as the amount of tooth that's there. Here's another one. You can see the difference. See if I can get the same angle here. There we go. But look at that. That's what a new chain looks like. So we're going to put it on right now. So changing a chain is not rocket science. All you gotta do is loosen up 2 nuts, and we're gonna put a new chain on here. I always wear gloves when I'm working with saws, because I've been cut so many times on the knuckles. It's just not fun, and then you're bleeding and all that kind of stuff. So this particular chainsaw is a Husqvarna 572 XP. It has keeper nuts on the side, which means that when I spin this out, the nuts will not fall off, so you don't lose them in the woods, which is kind of a nice feature. And I got to back off the tensioner here a little bit so I can get the cover off. And I cut a couple tanks with this just today. So there's the cover, and then all you do is lift up and you pull it off, and you take the old chain off, and we're going to put a new chain on. So now when you take out your new chain out of the box, a lot of times it'll be twisted like this. And what that means is that your chain somehow got wrapped around itself, and you need to get this out. The easiest way to do it is to lay it on a flat surface, and what you do is you grab the top side right here, and you're going to pull this all the way through like this. And you're going to get it to be flat like that. So what happens a lot of times is your chain will, when it's in the box or handling, and when you pull it out, your chain will go over the top of itself like this, and it creates those 2 little loops on the side. You're going to get it down to 2, and then it's just a matter of looking at it so that you can see that you got to slide it out like that, and there you got it. And then you can hold it up, and it's all nice and even like this, and now we can put it on the bar. So when I put it on the bar, I usually do it hanging up. I'll show you that. Okay, so here I've got the bar, I've got the chain, and normally I would flip the bar over. I would turn it side for side, because as your chain goes around the tip, you're going to get some wear right in the tip here, and you want to wear evenly. So that's why sometimes you'll see a bar that's on the right way, and sometimes it's on upside down, because you want to flip them around so you get even wear. Now the first thing you want to do when you put your chain on is make sure you get it into the sprocket here up in the tip. But before that even, make sure that your teeth are going the correct direction. That's real important, because you can put them on backwards. Do not ask me how I know that. So what you do is you just kind of slide it into the rail, get all your chain guides in, and we are in. And then what I do is once I get them all the way in, I flip it upside down like this, keep some tension on it, and there you go. So you can hang on to it just like this, and the chain is on. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take it directly, once you get it on, you're going to go right onto your bolts on the side of the head of the motor, engine, power head, whatever you want to call it, and make sure you go onto the back of the sprocket. And I always like to give it a couple little spins here so it seats itself down into the sprocket. So now it's on the sprocket properly, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the cover back on. And most of the time you're going to have to back off the tensioner. I already did that, the chain tensioner, because if you do not do that, a lot of times you won't be able to get the chain tensioner adjuster in the slot where it's got to go. Because your chain is a new chain, it's not going to be stretched yet or wore in to the point where you're going to be able to just slap it right in there, because it's not going to fit the hole where your chain tensioner is. So we'll spin these on and get the nuts back down, and I am just about done. So there we go, we got it on, and it's on fairly tight. And the reason I'm putting it on pretty darn tight is it's a new chain. It will stretch out or seat itself. You gotta realize there's lots of joints that are going to have to fit in tight, where you got all your rivets that are holding all the chain parts together. So you're gonna wanna make sure you get the chain pretty tight when you first put it on. And then you're gonna run it, probably do a few cuts, maybe half a dozen, maybe a dozen. You're gonna need to tighten it up again on a new chain. So there you go, new chain is on the saw. So here's some of the chains that I've replaced. These are dead ones. I don't know if you guys can see up closer. I don't know how good the camera's focusing, but these are all nubs. Some of them are worse than others. And I keep telling myself I should save these just in case I need to cut a stump off, but I think I've got enough here to do that. This is probably 2 years worth right here is what I would guess. I got a couple other ones I just found in there too. There's 2 of them sitting over here. This one just needs to be flattened out. It's got pretty good teeth on it. I'm gonna see if I can straighten it out enough. But these are heavy. This has got to be, I don't know, probably 25, 30 pounds of chains. I don't know what I'm gonna do with them. If you want them, I'll sell them to you. That's it for today, folks. You know what to do. Poke the buttons, hit the like, subscribe, share. Tomorrow, I'm going to be back in the wood yard. You should come on back. It'll be fun. Between now and then, get outside, get cutting. Good night. I read.